What is up, guys? Welcome into yet another edition of the Ben Garcia Show. Thank you so much for making us a part of your day, however you're watching, however you're following, whether it's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts for free, on the iHeartRadio app, or you're putting a face to the voice and you're watching on YouTube. We appreciate that as well as we continue to grow on that platform as well. It has been awesome. It's been amazing. I actually have some really exciting news for my followers, for my, dare I say, fan base. I would say that's not there quite yet. That announcement will be coming very, very soon, and I cannot wait to share it with you guys. Before I get into anything else, any other nonsense, it's a jam-packed football show, so let's jump right into it. So this is something that I've really struggled with here on the Ben Garcia Show with a bunch of different aspects when it comes to the New York Jets. I have talked myself into being a Jets believer this offseason like multiple times. There's been numerous times where I'm like, you know, it does make sense. They do have some playmakers. Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson, Aaron Rodgers. The offensive line is, I'm not sure it's even a middle-of-the-pack offensive line, but it's much more improved than it was last year. And it is probably the most improved offensive line in the NFL, just on the whiteboard, just if you put a list in front of me, just if you look at the names on the back of the roster. It's a lot better than it was last year. Still, where does that rank amongst the NFL? Definitely not some of the top tier offensive lines. The defense, I mean, what can I say about it? Probably the best defense in the NFL. Robert Saleh's coaching that up. We've seen that Robert Saleh is clearly a competent head coach because he has gotten his side of the ball correct. But here's why I'm going to ultimately be on the side of the New York Jets have no chance to win a Super Bowl. The New York Jets, in my opinion, have no chance to be a Super Bowl contender. I am just out on the New York Jets. And as much as I've tried to talk myself into the Jets, as much as I've tried to talk myself into just the clear competency that they now have at quarterback, even if, and we'll get to this in just a second, if Aaron Rodgers is not Aaron Rodgers that we're prone to seeing, I still believe they could be a 9, maybe a 10-win team. But I'm not picking the Jets to win their division, and I'm not picking the Jets to make it to the Super Bowl, and I'm not picking the Jets to win multiple playoff games this year. I'm just out. There's only so much dysfunction I can take with a team before I pull the plug. And at this point, it's just too much. It's just too much. The straw that broke the camel's back is this Hassan Reddick nonsense. It's not me saying that they shouldn't have traded for Hassan Reddick. Clearly, they saw a need at pass rusher, brought in Bryce Huff, brought in Hassan Reddick, wanted to make that pass rush as best as they could to continue to hold teams to fewer points. But how you don't work out the logistics of even the bottom line of framework for a contract extension for a guy that you know is unhappy because he wants to fix his contract, wants a contract extension, wants more money, is beyond me. And the Aaron Rodgers thing, no one is a bigger fan of Aaron Rodgers than me. I love the guy's personality. I love him as a football player, although I think he clearly has some deficiencies in the playoffs, and he's clearly a head case. Now, he's not a head case in terms of the law or he's breaking laws. I guess that's really the only aspect in which you'd be a real head case that would just be a nuisance. But he's free-spirited, and he doesn't act presidential like Tom Brady did. He doesn't act quarterbackial like Lamar Jackson does, like a Tom Brady does, like Patrick Mahomes does. He just doesn't do that. He's a free spirit. He's a free spirit, marches to the beat of his own drum. That's what Aaron Rodgers does. But the no distractions, we're cutting that out and then leaving for a trip to Egypt, it's just so mind-boggling at times, the decisions that Aaron Rodgers decides to make off the field, which is clearly going to complicate what is going to happen on the field for the New York Jets. The Hassan Reddick controversy has just rubbed me the wrong way. the clear incompetency of the front office not to even have a framework of a contract extension ready, to the point where they might have to sell off Hassan Reddick for less than they got him for. That's the incompetency of the New York Jets. I see the clear improvement at quarterback, which we'll get to right now. Yes, they won 7-6 games with Zach Wilson, and I couldn't even remember the other guy who played last year. But expecting Aaron Rodgers to be 2019, 2020 MVP level Aaron Rodgers, just be honest with yourself. That's a pipe dream. That version of Aaron Rodgers is not coming back anytime soon. That version of Aaron Rodgers, that ship has sailed. If you go back to Aaron Rodgers' final year with the Green Bay Packers, if you go back to that final season with the Green Bay Packers for Aaron Rodgers, you will see he wasn't that great. Kind of a middle-of-the-pack quarterback. And you'll say, well, his wide receivers are young. Well, Aaron was the one who didn't show up to training camp to participate with those wide receivers and get some real chemistry. At one point, he just phased out Christian Watson for half the season for not catching a touchdown pass in week 1 against the Vikings. That's the Aaron Rodgers issue. Expecting him to be 3/4 of MVP level Aaron Rodgers when we've seen his most recent full season on the Green Bay Packers, which wasn't very ideal, it just goes to show you, you're probably not going to get prime Aaron Rodgers. You're probably not going to get 3/4 of prime Aaron Rodgers. Now, 50% of prime Aaron Rodgers, does that still get you in the playoffs? Possibly, because Zach Wilson was such a monstrosity to that Jets offense. But expecting all the best things to happen with all these distractions in the locker room, with the constant questions of where's Aaron? Is he in Egypt? Is he going to show up to training camp or off-field things that you have to do, OTAs, minicamp, all those things. Or you look at the Hassan Reddick issue. You're not 1,000% sure if their offensive line is really going to be at least a middle-of-the-pack offensive line. It could still be awful. So with all the controversy, with not just Aaron Rodgers, but the Hassan Reddick stuff, the incompetencies of the front office, the uncertainty of the offensive line, I just can't buy this New York Jets team. I just can't buy stock in this team being a legitimate Super Bowl contender. They're not going to win the division. That's going to go to the Buffalo Bills just because I trust Josh Allen and the competency of the Buffalo Bills organization than I do over the New York Jets organization. But it's not even that I don't believe in them to win the division. I don't know if they're going to get second place. Sure, Tua Tagovailoa in his own right has many issues. I'm not sure the guy can play in any temperature under 60 degrees. But the talent around that Miami Dolphins team and the clear additions that they've made on the defensive end and adding a elite level defensive coordinator, what do you want me to say? I would just take the Miami Dolphins over the New York Jets. And at some point with the New York Jets, you just have to continue to pick against them until they finally show they are clearly ready for some clear competency and continue to churn that out. But if they don't do that, like I've known they haven't been able to in years prior, and I don't expect Aaron Rodgers to be MVP level Aaron Rodgers, I don't expect the competency of the front office to figure it out, I don't expect the Hassan Reddick thing to be resolved anytime soon where there's no bad blood, and I don't expect the offensive line to be amazing. The only clear answer and sure thing on that team is the defense. And that's the only thing they can hang their hat on. And what do we know about the NFL in 2024? Defense can only get you so far, but it no longer wins you championships. It's just now an offensive-driven league, and the New York Jets just aren't there. Let's talk some of this Dak Prescott controversy, the extension. Should he stay? Should he go? I have advocated for the Dallas Cowboys to trade up for CJ Stroud years ago. I've advocated for the Dallas Cowboys to really start to get ahead of this Dak Prescott thing so that you're not stuck with your back against the wall with either having to pay Dak Prescott or go into clear controversy and just diabolicalness and awfulness that you'd be without Dak Prescott as your quarterback. Let's just lay the groundwork right here for Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott is not an awful quarterback. He's not horrendous. He's not terrible. But then there's also the flip side. There's the Dak Prescott haters who think the guy couldn't throw a football 10 yards down the field. And there's the clear Dak Prescott stans and Cowboys fanatics that just can't face reality. Dak Prescott's not elite either. Is he in the Kirk Cousins tier? Probably. Very similar numbers. Definitely a better mover, mobile-wise than Kirk Cousins is. And honestly, in a vacuum, I'd probably take Dak Prescott over Kirk Cousins. But that's not saying anything against Kirk. Kirk has clearly been a fine quarterback and has made a lot of money in this league. But the Dak Prescott thing is just really interesting. Because on one hand, you have the Dallas Cowboys. And here's why I would extend Dak Prescott. Here's why I would make Dak Prescott the future franchise quarterback for years to come and stick with Dak Prescott for the near and foreseeable future. This is the Dallas Cowboys. This isn't the Atlanta Falcons. This isn't the Cleveland Browns. This isn't the insert irrelevant team here. This isn't the Carolina Panthers. The Dallas Cowboys, when they're not relevant, are not able to hide. You know who's able to hide? The Carolina Panthers. No one will even notice that they're in the NFL this year. The Browns, insert irrelevant team here. Those teams just don't matter. For the longest time, this was the Falcons of the world or the Panthers or, honestly, at times, the whole NFC South. The Dallas Cowboys have nowhere to hide. They're the biggest brand in American sports, and without a doubt, without a shadow in my mind, the clear-cut number one brand in the NFL. It's not close. There's no second place. That's how far away it is. If you just decide that even if the Dallas Cowboys flame out in the most Dallas Cowboys fashion this upcoming year, and flame out and are abysmal and lose in the first round of the wild card after barely scraping it in, and Dak Prescott's awful, you can move off Dak. But here's my question to moving off Dak. Then what? Then what's your idea? Because the Dallas Cowboys have a ton of talent on that team. Micah Parsons, CeeDee Lamb, Trayvon Diggs, multiple guys that can play on that team. Very talented team with the Dallas Cowboys. You are never going to bottom out. You'll never be a 3-win team. You'll never be a 2-win team. You'll never be a 4-win team. So where are you going to be picking in the draft for the ability to get you a quarterback to the level of Dak Prescott, which, in your opinion, those who want to move off from Dak Prescott isn't amazing, but we can all agree Dak Prescott is a very capable quarterback in the NFL. So the reason why I would stick with Dak Prescott and give him a reasonable extension, not an insane $60 million extension, but there is a fine line between reasonable and unreasonable for Dak Prescott's contract extension, is because you're the Dallas Cowboys. You can't be irrelevant. If you go 3-14, 4-13, whatever the number is, if you have a horrendous record, you are going to be seen as a laughingstock of the NFL. Everyone is going to point at you. Everyone is going to say how disastrous you are. And even worse, if you're a middle-of-the-pack team, 7-10 or 8-9 or whatever nonsense it is, you will really be in no man's land. You won't be good enough to make it in the playoffs, and if you ever scrape it in because the NFC is god-awful, you'll never do anything. And so you still won't be winning championships. The best course of action for the Dallas Cowboys is not to move on from Dak Prescott, unless, of course, that contract extension is just so insane that you can't justify it, in which that I understand too. But if you can get a reasonable contract for Dak Prescott, which is, at this point, $50 million a year, that's just the going rate for quarterbacks now, you have to stick with it. The salary cap will continue to rise. You still got CeeDee Lamb. You still got Micah Parsons. You still got Diggs, the cornerback, there holding down the defense. You can win with that. And if you could really figure out a deal that is even more team-friendly, but also still gives Dak Prescott his due, you can be a clear-cut, dangerous playoff team. Would I pick them to win the Super Bowl? No. But this notion that if you move off of Dak Prescott and you'll instantly find the next quarterback and you'll instantly be championship contenders and you'll fix all your problems, that's fantasy land and you're not living in reality. Look at the Carolina Panthers, look at the Cleveland Browns, look at teams like the Chicago Bears, who have never really had a franchise quarterback, and the Bears finally think they do with Caleb Williams, but anything can happen. No 4,000-yard passers on that team ever in the history of the Bears quarterbacks. And then again, you see the same thing with the Cleveland Browns. They thought they had their quarterback. All they had to do was throw a bunch of money at Deshaun Watson. How's that working out? This is the turbulence you get into when you don't have a clear quarterback. A clear someone that you could say, that's our guy. So just shooing away Dak Prescott feels good. It makes you feel better. But in reality, does it make you better? Are you going to be able to find the next guy? If you think it is incredibly easy to find a franchise quarterback because you went from Tony Romo to Dak Prescott, you're insane. And I hate to break it to you, that's just fantasy land. So getting rid of Dak Prescott is not something you should just do just to do. And the Dallas Cowboys have some real issues ahead of them. This is why I said to get ahead of this years ago. Draft a quarterback in the second round, try to develop him. Don't let it get to this point when you have to choose between Dak and irrelevancy. Because if you're going to choose between being irrelevant or Dak Prescott, you're the Dallas Cowboys. You should always choose relevancy with Dak Prescott as your quarterback for the foreseeable future. Okay, so I don't want to spend a ton of time on this. I'm a couple of days late, but just hear me out here for the JJ McCarthy injury news. And this could sound non-sensitive, but I mean, I am to the situation. It's terrible. You never want to see someone get injured. You never want to see a torn meniscus. You never want to see a guy lose a season. But what I will say is it's a very mature move for the Minnesota Vikings to hold this guy back and say, we care more about your health. You're ultra young, 21 years old. Sit this one out, man. You probably weren't going to play a lot of the season anyways. And that's why I believe, although injuries are terrible, and no one's rooting for injuries, and I am quoted saying that I thought JJ McCarthy could be the best rookie quarterback this year. So this is not me rooting for any injuries. But here's what I will say to a Minnesota Vikings fan base that, let's just call it what it is, it's kind of solemn right now. It's kind of sad. A lot of tragedies and tough injuries have happened back to back to back to back. But let me build it like this, Minnesota Vikings fans, in which I know a lot of you guys, and I actually kind of like the fan base. So let me build this positive narrative for you. You weren't going to win the Super Bowl this year. You probably weren't making the playoffs this year. Isn't it just better to bottom out? Isn't it just better to let Sam Darnold take the reins and just be clear-cut awful? Could JJ McCarthy's injury, which we all said is terrible and no one is wishing an injury, could it be a blessing in disguise? JJ McCarthy, let me just paint the picture for you. JJ McCarthy takes all year just to relax, sit back, learn the playbook, knows there's no pressure to play by week 8, week 9, week 10, and just learn behind a capable, veteran, journeyman quarterback like Sam Darnold. And then with Sam Darnold at quarterback, although he's a journeyman, he's capable, he can mentor, he's been through the NFL, he's a veteran quarterback at this point. It's kind of awful as a starting quarterback. So if you have Sam Darnold, you're probably going to lose a lot of games. You're probably going to lose a ton of games. And that's not a bad thing. Imagine if you're in the same scenario, the same shoes that the Chicago Bears were in just a few months ago. You decide. Let's say the Vikings get a top 3 pick because their offense isn't there. The defense I still don't really believe in either. Danielle Hunter's gone. They got Jonathan Greenyard, but who knows how that's going to pan out. But think about it. What if this is just a lost year for the Minnesota Vikings? Just one lost, rebuilding year for the Minnesota Vikings. You let TJ Hawkinson get healthy. You let this offense really gel and figure out what they need. Jordan Addison develops again in his second year. Justin Jefferson is an elite wide receiver again. JJ McCarthy can just sit back and take the ropes and learn the ropes behind Sam Darnold, a capable veteran backup journeyman quarterback who can teach him the ropes of the NFL, and just sit back, be awful this year, be tremendously awful, and then you already have your quarterback for the future. You don't have to worry about a Carson Beck or a Shedeur Sanders. It seems like over in Minnesota, they are sold on JJ McCarthy as their quarterback of the future. This is the best place to be in. JJ McCarthy takes a year to learn. You bought him out. You get a top 3 pick, and you do what the Chicago Bears did and fleece another team, take multiple first-round picks for a quarterback-hungry team that there will be in April, and allow yourself to just develop, let JJ McCarthy learn, get a top 3 pick, still have a first-round pick in this year's draft, replenish that draft stock that you lost last season from trading up twice in the first round the first time, and then again to trade up one spot to get JJ McCarthy on this team. You replenish that draft stock, and who knows? You can name your rate if you're in striking distance for a quarterback that another team wants that you don't need because you have JJ McCarthy. You could end up getting 3 first-round picks for a quarterback-starved, hungry team. It's not a terrible spot to be in. It's actually, if you argue it, the best spot to be in. And then next year, JJ McCarthy comes back fully healthy. It's a torn meniscus. It's not a torn ACL. So he's fully healthy, still mobile, has a year of learning under the complex Kevin O'Connell system, a head coach that I am very fond of. That sort of Alex Smith, Patrick Mahomes level of mentoring from Alex Smith to Patrick Mahomes to Sam Darnold to JJ McCarthy. He's 21 years old. He gets a year older to mature, get in the weight room. And then you use those picks that you get from trading back from being so awful last year to help weaponize that defense that I'm not so fond of. Maybe get an extra offensive lineman to help JJ McCarthy standing up straight. This is the way the JJ McCarthy injury should be looked at for Vikings fans. Because the worst thing you can be in the NFL is mediocre. Because you don't make the playoffs and you're not worse enough to get a terrible draft pick. The Minnesota Vikings are in prime position. JJ McCarthy's going to be fine. He's going to be able to come back next year. He's going to learn this system. And although it's awful that JJ McCarthy got injured, it could be a blessing in disguise to allow him to mature another year, learn this Kevin O'Connell system, get some extra draft capital from trading back in this year's draft because you were so bad this year, because Sam Darnold was your quarterback. This is the way the JJ McCarthy injury should be looked at. Because he's going to come back healthy, he's going to come back better than ever, and being able to just be a pro for a year and go to the professional quarterback school, and your teacher and principal are Sam Darnold and Kevin O'Connell, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world for the Minnesota Vikings. And I believe that's how this should be looked at. A blessing in disguise, not completely devastating to their just near future. I believe the Vikings, if they play their cards right, can really capitalize and be a threat to win the NFC North next season. Thanks so much for tuning into the Ben Garcia Show. I got to get out of here. I've got so many things to do, but I appreciate you tuning into the show, whether it's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, for free on the iHeartRadio app, or you're putting a face to the voice you're watching on YouTube. We appreciate all that. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. By, I believe, sometime next week, I'll have an awesome announcement for you guys. We've been growing. I owe all of my success to you, the listener, to you, the viewer. So I try to reply back to everyone, whether you love my takes, whether you hate my takes. I can't wait to share some really cool news with you guys. I'll probably drop like a 3-minute video just explaining what's going to happen. But some good things happening here at the Ben Garcia Show, and some good, let's just call it partnerships for now. That'll be your little teaser, which is not a great teaser. But either way, appreciate you guys listening. I'll talk to you guys next week. And until the next Ben Garcia Show, I'm Benjamin Garcia, and it's been the Ben Garcia Show.